Hey guys, welcome to the 5-day emotional mastery audio training. Today is day 2, and my name is Christopher Wilson. If you weren't here for us with us for day 1, go back in the feed and listen to day 1 first. I'm here with Dave Shepard, not Dr. Dave Shepard. Was just in our community men's group with Dr. Chris Spromberg. So sorry about that, Dave. It's good to be
I'll
with
take
you,
the
man.
doctor title. Why not? I haven't earned it though.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So let me just jump in with an intro for any of the men who are new here. We are the Unshakable Man community. We have the 5-day Unshakable Self-Confidence Course Plus bundle, which goes along with this 5-hour or 5-day emotional mastery audio training that Dave and I are recording for you here. So what I really want to make sure that we make clear about this training is that this training is setting the view on emotional mastery. And then our intention is to inspire you to make the journey. And so, what does that mean? That means to inspire a man to answer the call in his life and relationships and to learn how to show up in a more empowering way, to take radical responsibility for how he responds to his life and relationships and challenges and the things that are happening on and in his body, and to to take on that, what we call that shadow and gold mission, to go on this somatic journey out of your head and into your body. Okay. And so we're going to be talking about emotional mastery today in day 2. But the community has formed around these practices. And so when you sign up for the Unshakable Man community, you get access to a suite of trainings. And these are trainings that we have designed or that I've recorded for you to take you on this journey out of your head and into your body. And so you get the 5-day Unshakable Self-Confidence course. You get the 5-day somatic meditation training. You get the 5-day emotional mastery challenge, and you get the 90-day nervous system mastery training. And each of these, the 5-day format, has proven over the past 3 years to be the best format for the men in the Unshakable Man community to integrate this into your real life as it is. And that's really what I want to do here. We really are on this mission. Dave and I are here taking the time out of our day because these tools have really worked in our lives and relationships to help us show up in a more empowering way, to unleash our true selves, to become unshakable men. And so I hope I see you go over there and register. And when you do, you'll get a prompt to schedule a free 30-minute strategy session with me so we can help you point you in the right direction. But other than that, I'd love to just jump in with what we reviewed yesterday, just to recall that together. So yesterday, just give me one second here. Yesterday, we welcomed everybody in to the 5-day training. Dave and I visualized what emotional mastery is when it is embodied. So we both brought in examples of visualizing the embodied practice of emotional mastery in our life. And then we discussed, who is this for? And we reviewed the major warning of emotional and spiritual bypassing, which is why embodied practices are so powerful, is because they really invite you to show up in your life as it is and to integrate or to connect to your life and relationships as they are, as opposed to escaping your life or creating a place that you run to in your practice to escape challenges in your life. And then finally, we discussed why men, and that's the man box, shame, and disembodiment. And all of that is teeing us up for today. But our stretch when we left yesterday was to ask ourselves, is this emotional awareness or is this emotional mastery? So, Dave, did you have an opportunity to do that?
I did.
Awesome, man. What was it like?
My my sense of it was it was like a great tool to become more aware. Like
Okay.
I just it made me kind of pause, kind of quiet myself, ground myself, and
Mm-hmm.
and kind of become curious of kind of what I was feeling. Um, and
Okay.
sometimes that led to me just checking in with my body. Other times that led to me um, just kind of check in with like everything that was going on around me.
Okay. Rad. Rad. Yeah, I mean, this is one of these tools, right? Like noticing our awareness of our awareness. Um, I have maybe four memorable moments that I did. I did it a bunch of times today. Um, when it was 8 o'clock at night yesterday when we were doing this, so I woke up and did this today. And one was when I was walking into the dolphin club where I swim in the ocean, and I was blinking on, waiting in line to get in through the door, and I'm like, "Is this emotional awareness?" Right? And I what it helps me do, or it helped me do, is become aware of my awareness. And I was making space for people to walk in and out the door. And like you said, right, like noticing the physical sensations going on in my body, and noticing my relationship with the older gentlemen, or group of gentlemen, that were coming out of the gym and taking their time, going very, very slowly, walking through the door. Right. And so the point here with this stretch is to start to notice our awareness of our awareness. Like, where is it? And what I heard from you is that it was sometimes honor in your body, but it was also like noticing the space around you, or noticing other people in your environment. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So today we're going to go deeper. We're going to take it more intentionally into the body. And so I do, just to have more structure in here to move more briskly. I want to go over the main points that we want to dig into today. So first, chapter 5, what are emotional awareness, or what is emotional mastery? Chapter 6, being resourced. What does this mean? What does being resourced mean? And how is it the primary factor for success in life and relationships? Being able to be self resourced. Uh, no one can tell you what you are feeling. Chapter 7. Chapter 8, we're going to have a very specific definition of what are emotions. And this definition comes from Dr. Eve Ekman, who did a 10-year research study just on what do emotions researchers agree on, along with the Dalai Lama, across the globe, from different cultures and different languages. What do they agree on? And they could agree on very, very little, but they actually couldn't even agree on what an emotion was, because we actually don't know where, and we can't measure an emotion. All we can measure is what happens in relationship, physically, on or in the body or in the brain, in relationship to an emotional experience. But her definition is a really beautiful definition that we use here to guide our work at the Unshakable Man. Chapter 9, we're going to go into that there are no good or bad emotions. There's only constructive or destructive reactions or responses to an emotional experience. And finally, chapter 10, repression, suppression, expression, and letting go. So the four things that we can do with an emotional experience: we can repress, suppress, express, or let go. And then chapter 11, the Alan Watts backwards law, which is, I'm not going to get into it right now, but it's in relationship to that. And then finally, we're going to finish off with the emotional episode timeline, just a brief review of the emotional episode timeline. And I'm going to have a link in the show notes, and in the class notes, and in the school curriculum inside the community. If you log in, there'll be an image there of the emotional episode timeline, so you can follow along with that. And then finally, chapter 13, sensation creates emotion, which becomes a behavior, and then a story. So otherwise, we sometimes call sensation, emotion, feeling, thought, mood, judgment, story, belief system. And what this is called is neuroception. Okay, this is the cascade of events, that embodied events that launch on and in the body, that go up from the body up to the brain, that creates our perception of our reality on and in the body, which is why this is such an incredible thing to master for your success, or to become a full, real person in life, right? An unshakable man. So why don't we just jump right in with, like, what are what is emotional awareness, or what is emotional mastery? Just a definition of that.
They're a little bit different to me. So I'll answer the emotional awareness one first.
Mm,
But um,
beautiful.
for me, emotional awareness is the recognition of emotions to the point in which I can name it, right? I can locate it
Okay.
in my body and
Hmm.
as close to in real time as possible, right? Like um
Yeah. Yeah.
trying to avoid the being totally consumed by the emotion, right? Um
Okay. So two things I heard in there was to be able to name it,
yeah,
uh, which means if my emotional vocabulary is stunted, then my emotional awareness is stunted.
yeah. And I'm still working on that. Like I don't like
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at like the what I call the five core emotions, but
Uh huh.
there's tons of different shades of each of those. And I don't always know how to name all of those, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to have a caveat there for when we get into this in a more advanced way in the in inside the Unshakable Man community or in other teachings, uh, that no one can tell you what you are feeling. You're the only person who can report on your experience, right? And so, um, on one end, there's name it to tame it, right? So I feel sadness, or I feel angry, or I feel frustrated, right? And so my emotional vocabulary can be an amazing tool, uh, to be able to tap into one of the seven components of emotional awareness. And your emotional vocabulary is just one of them. Um, but there's also weasel words, which are words that we overuse to hide and end up hiding from emotional awareness. Like I feel anxious, or I feel scared, right? Or I feel unsafe, right? And what happens is it's very different to say I feel anxious than it is to say I feel rushed, I feel tired, and I feel confused, right? When you give it a more granular, when you use different vocabulary words to label different emotional embodied experiences on and in the body, your emotional spectrum widens, right? And your ability to come into the body and to identify different emotion states, sensations on and in the body shifts. And we're going to be talking about that in day 4, or day 3 during when we talk about the 7 components of emotional awareness. But I want to point out that you already intuitively know this, which is one of the reasons why I'm not preloading you for this conversation, is because you're you and I'm sharing my practice with you, but like you're you already are discovering this within you in your own language. And I think
Mm.
that's what's beautiful about this work is we all really know these things, but we're becoming conscious of it, right? And becoming better tool wielders, right? By sharing it intimately with another person, right? Like you and I, and the man that's listening to this, right? Like later, he's getting to hear our practice and to integrate that with himself. And I hope if you're listening to this, you just take a deep breath in your nose and right and like ground in and be with us here in this conversation. Another thing I heard you say is that you notice that there's a difference between working with an experience in the moment than working with something in the past,
Yeah.
right? And that is very important. Emotional awareness can only happen in the present, right? We are working with a present experience of a past event, or we're working with a present experience of a future potential future reality that we are experiencing in the moment on or in our body. But when we are not aware of our awareness and we are in our head, we are disconnected from our embodied experience, which is what many men are when they say, like, I feel numb or disconnected, or we think we are feeling, but we don't realize feeling can only be felt in the body. And that's the process of awakening, opening to expand, to feel more on and in our body. You following me?
I'm on you. You got it.
Cool, cool. All right. So for me, I'm going to define this as, I also appreciate emotional awareness as awareness of my awareness. My emotional awareness is different than my level of my state of emotional mastery. And so we're going to talk about being able to respond consciously to what is happening in the body and the environment, and recognizing that reactions are non-conscious. So the automatic reaction that I have to an emotional experience is a scripted, non-conscious behavior pattern that I have learned to keep me safe. The conscious pattern, the conscious response is where I am responding to what is happening on in my body in this creative way, or opening to be with what's happening in the environment from moment to moment. And so my ability to be resourced is based on how much sleep I've had, the state of my autonomic nervous system, and how much emotional or physical energy I have available to me at that time, right? But at the end of the day, what I really want to point out is it's about being able to respond consciously to what is happening in the body and in the environment. And so being able to feel into our body is called interoception, right? And so the skill, the embodied skill of being able to come into the body and have my awareness. When I asked you, is this emotional awareness? We became aware of our awareness. Remember how you said, like, you notice the environment around you? Now I want you to guide that into your body, right? And to start to notice that you can feel your left big toe, or you can slow down enough to feel your heart beating on in your body, or a pulsing sensation through the palms of your hands or in your brain. And that is interoception. And that's the primary skill set that people who have been identified, who are identify or have been socialized as male, we are cut off from that skill because we've feminized it. We've said that this isn't, our culture has told us that it's girly to feel our bodies and to survive, because in order to survive, we shut down feeling our body in order to cut off pain and stress and trauma, right? And anxiety that happens on and in the body. So what gets through tends to be more intense things like stress or anger, and stuff that opens us up when we're early in our opening process. Does that make sense? Anything
Yeah, absolutely.
come alive for you in that?
I was just thinking about this morning. I played golf, and I think that sports is such a big part of the culture of men, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's all about high performance. And I was having a particularly bad first couple of holes, and the thing that like woke me up was I like knocked my bag after hitting a bad shot with my club, and I haven't done that in a long time, like a year or so, maybe more. And I was just
Okay.
like, oh, that's weird. Like I was like, I'm angry. I'm like really, really frustrated.
And it
Um,
woke you up. What do you mean by it woke you up?
well, I was already frustrated and angry, right?
Mm-hmm.
And after 5 holes of not playing well, this shot was just so particularly bad, and I just lost concentration that when I like heard the club knock the bag, I was just like, oh, what's going on here? And so
Okay.
I literally just like looked down at the green grass, and I was probably there for like a good minute while everyone else is still playing around me, right? And yeah, I just kind of centered myself.
Okay. So
Hard 3 out of the next 4 holes, and like just moved on, right? Was able to
yeah,
continue to
yeah.
have fun and enjoy being there.
So to me, when you said it, my body or it woke me up, to me, as someone who is practicing or considers himself to have a practice, I am seeking sensation. I am looking for my body to wake me up, to catch my awareness. And so when you said that, that was a constructive thing to me, because it's a very special moment to have my awareness be on the game, and then to recognize, like, wait, what am I feeling in my body? Where do I feel it? What do I need? But I have this protocol. My relationship with this is that the sensations happening on in my body are inviting me to become more conscious, to become aware of my environment and how I'm feeling so I can respond to it. But for most men, we've learned to push that down, right? Or we're completely even unaware of what's happening on or in our body. And we're just prisoner to the reaction pattern that's happening next. Does that make sense?
Mm.
And so the 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 thing I want to like make sure we make clear about like living in our heads is that we are I'm I want to make it very clear to men who are listening to this that I'm not judging a man for being in his head. The way we look at this in our community, and from a training perspective, is that these are adaptive behaviors that we have that are adaptive in the sense that they've helped us stay safe. They've helped us find our place in the world. And these protective parts or patterns, when we become conscious of them, that is where all of our power is to open to that, into broaden and deepen the experience of our life, to actually feel more of our life. Because now that we are resourced, or we're becoming more resourced, we can actually open to what we've been suppressing consciously or unconsciously repressing, and start to take that information in as we gain more skill. Okay. Another example of this, another phrase for this, is called the hard way versus the open way. The hard way and the open way, they're both different ways of moving through the world, but the hard way leads to anxiety and disconnection. And it requires energy to repress or suppress moving through the environment by hardening and shielding. And the open way is incredibly challenging as well, but the open way leads to allowing. It's generative. We grow, we discover, we become more adaptable, and we connect to the world in our relationships. It's anxiety releasing, stress releasing, trauma releasing, and healing. And so that's they're both hard, they're both challenging, right? They both require a lot of attention to be, well, actually only one of them requires conscious attention, and that's the open way. The hard way is non-conscious. It's our nervous system has adapted to keep us safe, and so it's going to harden all as much as it can to just help us survive. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So we're going to move briskly here so that we can get into our next session. But the being resourced is the primary factor for success in life. And so, what does being resourced mean to you?
Um, I would say being aware enough to consciously choose how I react to what's going on around me and in me.
Being aware enough to consciously react. So I'm going to say to consciously respond to what is happening
Yeah.
in the world around me.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna, when I say consciously respond, um, I'm going to say that challenges are a part of our daily work in life, right? And being resourced means that we're able to respond to these tests, instead of using the word triggers, these tests of our system, with with the C's of self energy. So calm, compassion, curiosity, clarity, uh, confidence, to be able to become the primary caretaker for those parts of me, rather than looking out into the world around me to take care of me. And to make me feel better, I am able to learn how to make myself feel better, and then look to the world or my environment to be my secondary caretaker. And so the ability to self-regulate your nervous system with the intention to be a co-regulating resource for others. And in other words, real leadership. I'm able to notice when you said like being resourced to respond consciously. I'm actually able to notice, what am I feeling? Where do I feel it on or in my body? And what do I need right now? Or what does it need? Or what does it want? And I'm actually able to give it that, almost as if I'm reparenting myself. Does that connect with you in your own experience?
Yeah, I like the added detail that you put in there because I can be conscious of what I'm feeling, but still react as opposed to respond. And I think like
Mm-hmm.
respond is a much more positive um framing as opposed to like the reacting. It's just like sometimes it's almost like I'm watching myself. I'm like, I don't want to do this, but like I've just like I'm on some like preset way
Uh-huh.
of reacting to something. And so
Yeah.
like sometimes I'm conscious of it and I can't stop it, right?
Uh-huh.
But I like the
Yeah.
added detail that you put there. And one frame that's really helpful for me as I move through the world in this, when I know I'm doing it right, is I'm moving from a worldview of it's happening to me to a worldview is it's happening by me, meaning that like I'm an active part of the entire scenario. I'm
Mm.
no longer a victim, right? But I'm
Yeah.
I'm part of shaping this, right? You get in a fight with your best friend, your significant other, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, oh, that this person's being ridiculous. That's a to
Mm-hmm.
me perspective. But if a by me is like taking stock of how you've contributed to this and like, you mentioned all the C words, right? Like
Yeah.
calm,
Calm,
curious,
compassionate,
you know,
curious,
yeah, compassionate,
caring.
right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a totally different way of viewing the scenario and
Yeah.
responding to it as opposed to just like going down that downward spiral and reacting.
And many of us have learned in the survival process of getting to where we are today, to where we have agency over our environment or on how we respond. First of all, some of us aren't even aware that we do because we're looking for the other person to help us get our needs met. Meaning, I don't realize that I am actually, that all disruptions or all arguments or all tussles or challenges in relationship are happen when one person gives up responsibility for their emotional state to another person. Meaning, I need you to do something in order for me to feel good or to feel something, right? But where our power is in relationship is realizing that I am learning to be the primary caretaker for my parts. I am actually capable of going inside interoception and asking, what am I feeling? Where do I feel my body? And what does it need? And giving it what it needs. And that is actually good for everyone and everything, that is actually the constructive way of relating with the world and the environment. And very, very, very few of us have had that in our nurturing, right, to where we've gotten today. So in the process of having tests or triggers happen in our relating, we have non-conscious patterns where I get upset and then there's actually a story in my head that I need you to say or do something in order for me to feel better. But the
My
reality is,
entire good.
yeah, okay. Yeah. Is the reality is no matter what you say, until I am capable of allowing myself to be with what I am experiencing. This is the next part down of chapter 11, the Alan Watts backwards law. wanting an experience to be different than it is on and in my body is a negative experience. Being able to be with an experience as it is on my body is a positive experience. And so, in relating with the environment and with people in our lives, another phrase for this is my environment is happening for me, right? It's helping me find a place inside that needs my care and attention, and it's teaching me how to be able to take care of that.
I would describe my leadership career
Mhm.
as one of extreme emotional regulation, meaning that I
Okay.
could keep an even keel on my emotions
Yes.
so that I could influence others to act in ways that I thought were more acceptable, right? And as I gained more and more experience, what I basically learned was that as you move up an organization and you have more responsibility in terms of people or revenue or whatever it might be, that the
Mm-hmm.
general thing was that as you go up an organization, the people have better and better emotional regulation. But what I
Yes.
now know is that I did not have emotional awareness. I knew that things were negative or positive intuitively. And whenever it was negative, I just learned a set of socially acceptable ways to combat that. And that's how I
Mm-hmm.
rose up
To
the
suppress it.
the mostly suppressing. Yeah,
Yeah.
the emotion was suppressed, and then I would go into a set of behaviors that I knew would give me a good result, both in the short term and the long term for my career. And what I
Beautiful.
now
So what we
know,
call those are projects. Those are the projects
yeah,
that you go into in order to stay in connection. You're in order to stay connected, you're being inauthentic in order to stay attached. Maybe not even aware of that inauthenticity, because to maintain that identity, to stay in that environment, in that cutthroat environment, right? You are learning to suppress consciously or repress unconsciously what you are experiencing in order to be, air quotes, a better leader.
yeah, absolutely,
Okay.
yeah.
So what has changed in your opening in terms of your leadership? What are you becoming? What is happening into your awareness of your awareness now?
A few things. One is aware of my own emotions. The other is this idea that there are no bad emotions, right? We've talked that a little bit. So if someone else is experiencing a certain set of emotions, I'm much more capable of just being with those. And then I think the third thing is
Are you more capable
uh,
of being with those in yourself?
for sure. Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I
How
think
did
that's
you
part of the
learn that?
emotional awareness piece for me. Um, I think the meditation helps a ton. I think that
Mm-hmm.
being in group with you and the other men and
Mm-hmm.
watching um, people just talk
Witnessing.
about their experiences, yeah, witnessing, right? But also sharing my own, right? Like you get time to practice for yourself too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think all relationships are really a practice ground for all of this. It's like there's at this point, there's no point in time when I'm not practicing or I'm not trying
Beautiful.
to improve, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think the last
What's
thing is like
improving?
I'm much better at too many things to name, but like um, I mean, do you really want me to go through all the things I think that are getting better?
Well, just for me, my answer on that is improvement is my ability to be open, or to be able to be with the experience of what I'm having in my life as it is, right? And notice how my hands go out as opposed
Mm,
to holding on tightly to things, and to notice the tendency for me to get hooked has gone up in intensity, but the refractory period to come back to openness and to a state of acquiescence is reduced,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so that
And I would add one more thing,
yeah, go ahead.
and I would like
Mm-hmm.
your thoughts on this, but I'm also able to answer what I want far more quickly. Like
Mm. Or
especially
what
in
you need.
leadership scenario. or what I need. Yeah.
Hmm.
And sometimes just having a half a second to breathe and say like, what do I really want here
Hmm.
is enough to be way more open and way more courageous in terms of communicating with somebody without trying to be manipulative, right?
Hmm.
Without trying to um, coerce an outcome. Like
Yeah.
it's far more powerful to say like, this is what I want.
Hmm.
What do you think? And
Hmm.
and oftentimes people don't respond favorably to that, but it
Hmm.
opens a conversation, and you're being far more authentic and vulnerable, right? Um,
Hmm.
and curious, and I think that and probably empathetic too, right? Um, and so when all those things kind of come together, my experience has been that the conversations just totally change, and it becomes much more a partnership between you and the other person. And that sounds kind of crazy, I think, if you haven't experienced this. So like the most confrontational conversations you have all of a sudden switch into some sort of like form of partnership of like figuring out how to resolve the
Hmm.
conversation so that both parties can be in integrity, right? Like not like honest or dishonest, but just like whole, right? Like
Yeah.
they can be truthful to themselves.
I do want to point ahead to what I see in you for a man that might be listening to your where you're speaking from, is that when
Yeah.
you sit in container or when you sit in an unshakable man group, where there is structure, where men are able to, and because of the structure and the context of the space that we're in, that man is able to open. And so the opening is sharing or giving a voice to a place inside that maybe on the outside of that container he wouldn't be able to because of being judged or whatever. That's not the context of that. It would might be looked at as being victimized, being in the victim mode or complaining. But that's the point there, is that when you're in that container with those men, you're having an experience on and in your body in relationship to what they are sharing with structure. And we are becoming more and more capable of noticing our tendency to close or to disembody or to move, to reject what the experience is. But then, because that's the point of being in that space, we're invited to ask, what am I feeling? Where do I feel my body? What do I need? Which is getting our awareness out of the story in our head about the situation, and we're not necessarily projecting onto that man because we're not identified with him in any other way but being in that group with him. And so we're able to see this whole flood of cascading events happen in real time, from sensation to an emotion to having a bunch of feelings about it to having a thought, a mood, a judgment, a story, a whole belief go off, right? A whole movie in your head of what in the world. And yet that has nothing to do with that man in the group, right? And so that experience in relationship with a group of men is what men have not had in our culture. So what we've learned to do is to be out here, right? Like pushing away, and you use the word manipulating, but I'm going to use the word negotiating, right? Like you're constantly negotiating being allowed to feel or not to feel without even the awareness that you aren't feeling, right? Because your awareness of your awareness at that stage of your life is just, that's where I'm at. That's what it means to feel more. And so one of the things I always like to say in this work is you are the only person who can report on your emotional experience. So if your emotional experience hasn't broadened or deepened in the foreseeable past, then your awareness hasn't grown. You will actually feel your awareness grow. You'll actually start to see your life or relationships or challenges in a new way. And that is because you're actually being able to move through the world in a more open way instead of reacting based on past experiences without even knowing it. So I do want to jump in to the chapter 8, okay? Definitions, what are emotions, okay? And so I'm just gonna give this definition. We're gonna say this definition over and over again. You ready?
I'm ready.
What is an emotion? So I use a handling, I use hand movements while I do this. So I'm touching my body. I'm saying an emotion is a physical sensation, and I touch my body that's happening in or on my body that's sending a message to my brain that my mind is consciously or subconsciously aware of, that's sending a message to my brain that something important is happening to the body's well-being. So an emotion is a physical sensation that's happening on or in my body that my mind is consciously, so above the line, or subconsciously aware of, that's sending a message to my brain that something important is happening to my body's well-being. So let's break this down. It's a sensation, right? Like feel your body right now and tap in and seek sensation on and in your body. It becomes an emotion when we identify with it in some way, right? And then the mind is consciously or subconsciously aware of it, which means if my awareness is like the baseball game out in front of me, I might not be consciously aware of the emotions that are coming up on in my body until they become heightened enough to where I'm aware of it. Right? That's sending a message to the brain that something important is happening to the body's well being. And so there's no good or bad emotions. So as we slow things down, as we learn to use the breath as the bellows of emotion to get out of the head and into the body, we start to be able to get into these sensations that are happening on and in the body and to learn to be with them. And all of these sensations are in some way tension on and in the body. And so stress, anxiety, trauma, uh, frustration, just neurotic, psychosomatic tension of just holding your body in a certain position for too long, right? All of this is sensational, right? And then it becomes this emotion. All right. So the next two parts here that I want to break in on before we get, and I want to put these three things together and then we're going to build them into the emotional episode timeline, is that, first of all, is there anything about that definition of an emotion? An emotion is a physical sensation happening on or in the body that the mind is consciously or subconsciously aware of, that's sending a message to the brain that something important is happening to the body's well-being. Is there anything about that that's like,
Well, I've heard you say this a number of times, so this is not new to me,
mhm,
and I'm wondering if someone was brand new to this, what they might be thinking. And there's like a couple of parts in there that I think are a little bit interesting. Like the first is like this, just the recognition that an emotion is a sensation. Like I think
mhm,
for some people that's an epiphany for them.
yeah,
The next one is that it goes from your body up to your brain. I think we're so conditioned to be top down, like brain,
yep,
mind, heady,
mhm,
is like controls everything, that we don't
yep,
realize that it's actually coming from the body up, right?
yep,
Um,
yep,
and then I like this idea of well-being, that like subconsciously our brain is always connected to our body. And while we experience emotions when we might not be physically at risk, like emotionally at risk, like our well-being, I think
yeah.
connecting those things is super important, right?
Yeah, it's beautiful, man. This is why I ask you. I do this too much, right? So, and if I get excited about it, I miss like where are you with this? And I think you're really in a
Mm.
beautiful position to be able to bridge the gap, right? For a man who might be listening to this. So this top down versus bottom up, right? Like we're going to go into that more deeply in day 3 and day 4, day 5, but 80% of the information goes from the body up to the brain, and 20% goes from the brain down to the body. So if I'm having a thought in my head about a bill that's coming due in the future, and that creates an anxiety, that thought in my head sends a message down to my body and then inspires an emotional experience on and in my gut, let's say, increasing cortisol, increasing my heart rate, creating these sensations on in my body, creating tension in my throat or sweat or a narrowing of my vision. And then that comes up back up from the body into the brain, reinforcing that fear response. 80% of the information goes from the body up, 20% goes from the brain down. So I don't want to make any clear judgments around, oh, like it's all about top down or it's all about bottom up. And yet, the embodied, the story in the head, and we're going to talk about this at the end of tonight from a neuroscience perspective or the nervous system perspective, the story in our head follows the state of the body because of that cascade of launching events that form our perception of our reality, right? Sensation leads to an emotion, which leads to a feeling, a thought, a mood, a judgment, a behavior, a belief system. And we project that out onto the world, almost like it is a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Until you go, oh, wait, I can be with this. I am able to be with what's happening on or in my body. I don't need to react. I can, with that non-conscious reaction pattern, and I can actually enter into a more creative response, right? And I'm literally creating a new potential future reality from what my survival pattern wants. And this is what it means to become an unshakable man, right? To be able to open to be with more and more of the experience of your life and to show others that it's safe for them to do that as well. So there's that definition of emotions. The second part is that there are no good or bad emotions. There's only constructive or destructive responses to an emotional experience. Okay. Third piece is that we can only repress, suppress, express, or let go of an emotional experience. Repression is non conscious, it's happening below our conscious awareness. And oftentimes we refer to the shadow in this work. It's a very popular term right now. It is the collective or the place within our psyche that is, from an adaptive perspective, has formed in order to allow us to maintain human relationships, because there is a massive amount of human potential behavior in our sinister shadow and in our golden shadow that our ego in its current level of state doesn't have the tools to release effectively. And so one way of looking at the shadow is that it's the yin to the yang, right? Like as our ego becomes more heart aligned, the ego reshapes in the form to serve the shadow and allows our unique gifts, our golden shadow, our talents to come out into the world and to not go on too much of a journey. This is where the hero's journey comes from, right? It's not actually about going out and slaying dragons in the world or what we think it is in imagery. It's actually to go into your body and to be able to be with all of the things that block you, that have formed on and in your body, that block you from fully and completely expressing your loving awareness out onto the world. And that's what it means to be the hero that goes back to those places inside that block and then to return home with new magical skills. Right. I went on a tangent there. I wasn't planning to talk about that tonight. Where are you right now in your head? While I fix my
Um,
microphone.
yeah, I don't have a comment on that. I was just listening, enjoying it. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. So let's jump into the Alan Watts backwards law. You've already gotten that? That it's wanting
No,
experience
I
to,
don't.
so
Yeah,
this
I
is
was actually looking
a
forward to
very,
this
very
part because
common.
I haven't heard you talk about this before. You mentioned a little bit
Okay.
before, but Yeah.
So it's very simple. It's wanting experience to be different than it is a negative experience, right? So if an experience is happening in our present reality, wanting it to be different than it is negative. Being able to be with that experience as it is a positive experience. And so one of the ways that you see this embodied in our work in an Unshakable Man men's group is when a man checks in and says, "Hey, I'm Chris and I'm checking in and I'm feeling like this thing happened," no matter what it is, right? Like if it's a death in the family or they got fired or something, some horrible thing happened and he's there. What do we normally do? We say, "Hey, like I want to make you feel better." Like what's actually happening when a human being does that is they are saying, "I am uncomfortable being with you in this experience because I don't know how to be with this. So I'm going to reach across the divide and try to cheer you up so you don't have to feel this way." But then what that's actually sending to that man's subconscious is that the way he is feeling is somehow not the way he should be feeling. And so it becomes unprocessed. He doesn't know how to be with it. A trained man in an Unshakable Man men's group asks the man, "What are you feeling? Where do you feel in your body?" And then goes deeper with him, mirroring, saying, "When you said that, I felt scared, or I feel sad, or I feel connected." And even right now, as I model this, I notice that as I do that, I start to come into coherence with that. I'm not trying to get away from that experience. And once you can be with an experience as it automatically shifts into another experience. And this is where feeling sadness can feel an incredible joy, right? Or anger can turn into this beautiful release of shame and guilt. Does that make sense?
I want to call attention to something you said, which was that often for men, although I think it's for everyone, when someone else is experiencing a strong emotion,
Yeah.
what we are actually scared of is not the other person experiencing emotion, but our discomfort with how
Mm,
we feel about that person being in that state.
yes.
Um, and
And we're not even
the
aware
like
of it usually.
exactly, yeah. Well, it was the reason I wanted to call this out is because this was a huge epiphany for me. Like when I learned this, I learned it a little bit differently. I heard someone say that the reason why we don't give other people bad news or we don't give them feedback is not because we're worried about how they're going to react, but it's because we are uncomfortable with how we're going to feel however they react. So that was how I learned this. And when that happened, I was just like, oh shit. Yeah, that's a huge part of my interpersonal relationships. And now as I've gotten better at dealing with or not dealing with, but like witnessing other
Resourcing.
people be in their own emotion
Okay.
in their own emotions, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Resourcing. I'm like I've learned that just because someone else is feeling an emotion does not necessarily mean that I don't have any responsibility for that, but I can still be caring, right? I can still be empathetic and be with them in that emotion. And that's
Mm-hmm.
like there's a couple relationships that I have in my life where like just this one epiphany has totally changed everything. Like
Yeah.
just made
And
my
your
life a
ability
thousand
to
times better.
embody that, right? Like your ability to embody that, you can deliver fierce feedback in a direct and aligned way while being kind. You're actually being more kind than caretaking for that person because you're helping them and you're showing them that I am not afraid of what I am feeling on in my body. I can be with it. And when you deliver it from that grounded, open, heart-centered place, when you have practice with that, you're actually able to call a man up. You're able to call a person into their life instead of calling them out, right? And that is the definition of masculine embodiment, where it penetrates. right? It penetrates and it opens, and it also creates a container where any and all emotions can be present. It creates the womb, right? Where, and that's the environment inside of a men's group that we learn how to co-create by all showing up and moving through the stages of the group. All of these things aren't things we're going to talk about in here, right? This is our intro training, right? To just set the view. But for any man that's listening to this, like, I really hope that these conversations inspire you. You might feel scared or you might feel fearful, but it turns you on. It feels attractive. It's like, wow, there's something cool going on here, and I feel attracted to it. Like I feel challenged. I want to step in, and that's what it means to answer the call. That's what it means to be invited into initiation with a group of other conscious men who are practicing. And that's how I feel in this moment, just engaging with you on these subjects, right, Dave? Like it's just,
Well,
it's
I'm thinking back
life giving.
8 months ago, you started talking to me just like this, and I literally
Mm-hmm.
had no idea what you were talking about. There must have been 50 words that I didn't understand.
I feel protected when you
Interoception.
said that. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I'm okay. I might be overdoing it, but like I felt really challenged to stay with the conversation, and I don't feel that way anymore. Like there's nothing that you've said today where I was like, I don't understand what you're talking about. I might not fully grok all of it, right? And there's like
Yeah.
I'm learning
Great
this
word.
process as well, but I'm not scared, and I don't feel challenged beyond my comfort level, right?
Perfect. Perfect. Well, I want to bring you right to that edge, into that place of discomfort, and I want to bring guys right into that zone of growth, as we call it. And so let's move into the final two pieces here. Okay. So we're going to talk about the emotional episode timeline. We've got 10 minutes. So we're going to take these 10 minutes and we're going to go through the emotional episode timeline from Dr. Eve Ekman and her research. This aligns with the research of the sayings from Viktor Frankl of the gap between stimulus and response stuff, quotes that are always out there that people love to talk about with emotional awareness. This is a map of that episode timeline and what happens. Okay. So I want to go through each of these with you. So do you have it up on your computer?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, cool. So this is for a man that's listening, we're going to walk through each of these 5 steps. And this is the cascade. This is the emotional episode timeline. These are the steps that happen from the precondition to the post-condition when an emotional episode occurs. And this is happening all of the time, constantly in our experience of our life, not just once, but this is a map of it. And then what I want to layer on top of this is what's called neuroception. And that's the cascade of embodied events that create our perception of reality. And this is where we are not actually experiencing our life as it is. We're experiencing our life as our nervous system has adapted to experience it. Meaning, for some of us, if I feel something happening in my environment, okay, so let's jump in. Step 1, precondition. What does that mean to you, Dave?
Uh, my general view of the world, like my frame of reference, right?
Cool.
Um,
Yeah. So
I think of
let's
like
wrap
shooting
it.
like a video or something, right? Like what you see, like how you're
Yep.
coming to a situation.
Snapshot. Precondition is let's use an actual event. So precondition is walking out 8 o'clock in the morning, walking out, not yet realizing that the parking, I should have moved the car the night before for parking. So I'm going to have a $90 ticket any minute now. Okay. Trigger is noticing the ticket on the front of the car, right? 7:53. Let's say it's 8:01. The clock just changed. Supposed to move the car 1 minute ago. Just on my way out, trigger happens. So the event is the ticket, seeing the ticket, right? The perceptual database. What is that?
All your all the past grievances with the ticket made.
Okay. So a
Yeah.
perceptual database is based on this type on this event in the way that its trigger. This is the story in my head based on past responses. So for this one, I want to have something special. And that's that I didn't park the car. Anna did.
Ooh, yeah.
Okay. So the event happens, and then perceptual database is I didn't park the car. Then step 3 is there's a state change. Okay. The state change is notice the arrows. The arrows go out to physical
Mhm.
changes and psychological changes. Okay. So physical change. What's like an example of a physical change?
Like I'm angry, just like
Okay.
that rush
Yeah.
of heat.
Hands tighten on
Yeah.
the steering wheel. Lips get parsed. Blood pressure goes up. Eyesight, perception, side vision or eyesight narrows, right? Rushing, parking the car, automatically, all of that happens on in the body, sends a signal up to the brain, which triggers a story in the head, which is related to my perceptual database. Okay. And then there is either a constructive action or a destructive action. The constructive action opens me to be able to be with the experience of my life in a more empowering way. The destructive action repeats the event. It suppresses the event in some way and really cuts us off from seeing the world as it is. So in this one, what I'm going to say is uh, Anna didn't actually park the car. I'm automatically thinking that. And then I don't remember. And instead, the destructive action is I respond to that psychological shift and I send her a text message saying, damn, we got another $90 ticket. I can't believe, da, 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 right? Destructive action leads to a post condition. Make sense?
Absolutely.
And then you get let's say in this story of this event, I get a message back saying, no, I didn't park the car. You did.
And we're off to the
So
races.
I'm responding in that. You're right. And so I'm responding to that psychological story in my head with actually parked the car the week earlier, let's say. Right. And this didn't actually happen, but the easiest creative example the uh, of an emotional episode timeline. Okay. The next thing I want to point out is that your perceptual database, based on the trigger, is based on whatever has made you feel that way in past events. Meaning, if my partner is the trigger now, but the things that have made me feel this way in the past were other women or my mother or it wasn't even related to this. It's just abandonment in general. She is actually triggering up my perceptual database to go off. And the psychological changes that I'm having in my head and the physical changes in my body and the story in my head isn't actually about her, but I'm not conscious of that. So I'm not actually responding to my life and relationships as they are. I'm responding to them based on how past events who have felt this way had made me feel, or what my story in my head about them was. And I can't even see the projection because I'm so caught up in it. Okay. Now, if we add in being able to be resourced, okay, when we resource ourselves, when we take our awareness out of the projection and we learn that I can go ask myself, what am I feeling? Where do I feel it in my body? And what do I need in this moment? we can start to notice that cascade of events. We can start to see the story in our head going off as it's happening. Okay. And the more capable we become of caring for the places inside that need our care and attention and other those physical changes, we actually start to be able to see our life more clearly. So instead of projecting this onto the event, I'm able to respond to the event as it actually is. And this is an incredible tectonic shift in a human being's life. Because now, instead of recreating past traumatizing events in a self-fulfilling prophecy of thinking everybody outside of me needs to change for me to become happy, I'm actually becoming more and more capable of seeing through these challenges and responding to them in these creative, heart open ways that save energy. It actually takes less energy in order to use the constructive action that it does to go with the destructive, where I'm suppressing or repressing large amounts of energy and just getting re-triggered over and over and over again. Sometimes what we're going to say this in the future is that our life is our curriculum and we each have our own. And so rather than looking at the problems in my life as like things that are bad, look at the problems in my life as opportunities to learn to respond in a more conscious way, asking, what is my intention here? Or what is this here to teach me? What is my intention? And how can I show up in a more empowering way? Those three questions are the guides that bring you through this emotional episode timeline.
I love it.
A lot.
I
Awesome, man.
am. I want to ask you a question about this last thing. The being with things as they are. Um, I feel like there's like two basic parts of this. One
Mm-hmm.
is I'll call it the outside world, right? Like once you have the ticket, you have the ticket, right? Like unless you were given it an error, which almost never happens, like you kind of deserved it, right? Like the car was there when it wasn't supposed to. You can't change that. And then the other part is also your like your internal emotions about that. And I think that like such a big part of this is not being perfect, but being aware, right? It's like, okay, yeah, I got this ticket. Yes, I'm really fucking angry about this. Okay, if you've made it this far, like that's great, but like the next part that comes, like how you then respond, I feel like for me, one on my edge here, like for a while I was trying to be perfect in how I responded instead of just like being with it. It's like, yep, can't change the ticket, can't change how I'm feeling. How do I want to respond? There's like a million different ways you can respond, and some are better than others. But just like being curious and
Yeah.
watching how that plays out is really the kind of, at least for me right now, it seems to be kind of the secret, as opposed to being like, oh, how should I react in this situation if I want to be emotionally aware and be resourceful, right? Or fully resourced, as you like to put it.
Yeah. Yeah. And what brought me energy and what I noticed and what you said is that there's a million ways I could respond. And
Yeah.
that in many of the texts about this and the the from a nervous system perspective to a Shogun Trungpa like way of the spirit man type perspective, more spiritual lens, uh it's really they'll often use language like the entire world, the vast expanse of possibility opens. A whole world of creative, unlimited possible responses opens to a human being once they start to see this. And that really truly does happen. We're going to talk about what happens in the nervous system if you react and you get hooked and it becomes a fight or flight response. The fight or flight response can only work with past reaction patterns because it cuts off your ability to respond in a creative or divergent way. Your ability to think creatively, your ability to see the world in a different way completely goes away because it's your survival response. The brain doesn't want you thinking creatively to how to respond to when a train is going to hit you, right? It wants you to just jump and react to get out of the way to survive. But if you know how to get into your body, maybe you can also grab that person with you or take that person with you, right? Like help other people and open and be a more grounded resource for other people in the environment at the same time, right? Another way to look at this is that the most grounded person in the room is the leader, right? But oftentimes when I hear guys say that, I think what they're saying is being stoic and disconnected, which is like trying to choose the right response
Yeah.
as opposed to uh, really connecting to what they're feeling and experimenting, right? Testing to find out what really does work here for me. I kind of felt like I heard that in your response, in yours,
Yeah, that was perfect.
about how you used to try to be perfect, right?
Yeah, try
Awesome.
to get it right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, this is an allowing process. It's not a trying process. Trying in the head, allowing, opening, expanding, learning to become an unshakable man who could become more and more resourced and able to take care of his parts, being a resourced person for himself and then for others. And so, with that, gentlemen, this was day 2 of our 5-day emotional mastery audio training. So, today, our stretch is to ask yourself, we're going to go from the first one, which is this emotional awareness or is this emotional mastery, right? That was the question we asked, right? Or what?
Emotional
Yeah,
awareness, I thought.
yeah. Is this emotional awareness, which
Is
opens
this
you up to
emotional
become
awareness?
aware of your awareness? Yeah. Now we're going to take it one step further, and I want you to just ask these 3 questions throughout your day. What am I feeling? Where do I feel it honor in my body? And what does it need? Okay. And I want you to watch for any needs, messages that you need something outside of you to change. And I want you to go through those until you can get to what does it need from me? What can I give it? And if you ask yourself, what am I feeling? Where do I feel my body? And you don't feel your body, I want you to connect to the disconnection. I want you to start to feel into your body, into the numbness, into that sense of disconnection. And if you get stuck or this feels completely confusing to you, but you are interested in doing this work, then come sign up for the community and come to our weekly community men's group because many, many men are completely disconnected from their bodies. And what you need is you need other men in relationship with you. You need to practice this breath work and these meditations in order to start to open up more feeling. That's all do this program with us has shifted or changed his relationship with his level of emotional awareness from a self-reported perspective. All right. I'm Chris Wilson. Thank you so much for listening. Dave, thank you so much, man. Thanks for being here.
Pleasure, man. This was a lot of fun.
All right. I'll see you tomorrow.